Narrated Abdullah, the Prophet went out to answer the call of nature and asked me to bring 3 stones. I found 2 stones and searched for the third, but could not find it. So I took a dried piece of dung and brought it to him. He took the 2 stones and threw away the dung and said, "This is a filthy thing." Volume 1, Book 4, number 159. Narrated Ibn Abbas, the Prophet performed ablution by washing the body parts only once. Narrated Abdullah bin Zayd, the Prophet performed ablution by washing the body parts twice. Narrated Humran, the slave of Uthman. I saw Uthman bin Affan asking for a tumbler of water, and when it was brought, he poured water over his hands and washed them thrice, and then he put his right hand in the water container and rinsed his mouth, washed his nose by putting water in it and then blowing it out. Then he washed his face and forearms up to the elbows 3 times, passed his wet hands over his head and washed his feet up to the ankles thrice 3 times. Then he said, Allah's Apostle said, "If anyone performs ablution like that of mine and offers a 2-rakah prayer, during which he does not think of anything else unrelated to the present prayer, then his past sins will be forgiven." After performing the ablution, Uthman said, "I am going to tell you a hadith which I would not have told you had I not been compelled by a certain holy verse." The sub-narrator Urwa said, "This verse is verily those who conceal the clear signs and the guidance which we have sent down to 159. I heard the Prophet saying, if a man performs ablution perfectly and then offers the compulsory congregational prayer, Allah will forgive his sins committed between that prayer and the next prayer till he offers it." Volume 1, Book 4, number 162. Narrated Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, "Whoever performs ablution should clean his nose with water by putting the water in it and then blowing it out, and whoever cleans his private parts with stones should do it with odd number of stones." 163. Narrated Abu Huraira, Allah's Apostle said, "If any one of you performs ablution, he should put water in his nose and then blow it out, and whoever cleans his private parts with stones should do so with odd numbers, and whoever wakes up from his sleep should wash his hands before putting them in water for ablution, because nobody knows where his hands were during sleep." 164. Narrated Abdullah bin Amr, the Prophet remained behind us on a journey. He joined us while we were performing ablution for the Asr prayer, which was overdue, and we were just passing wet hands over our feet, not washing them thoroughly. So he addressed us in a loud voice, saying twice, "Save your heels from the fire." Twice or thrice, he said, "Save your heels from the fire." 165. Narrated Humran, the freed slave of Uthman bin Affan. I saw Uthman bin Affan asking for a tumbler of water to perform ablution, and when it was brought, he poured water from it over his hands and washed them thrice, and then put his right hand in the container and rinsed his mouth and washed his nose by putting water in it, then blowing it out. Same as the previous. Number 166. Narrated Muhammad ibn Ziyad. I heard Abu Huraira saying as he passed by us while the people were performing ablution from a utensil containing water, "Perform ablution perfectly and thoroughly, for Abul Qasim the Prophet said, save your heels from the hellfire." 167. Narrated Ubayd ibn Juraj. I asked Abdullah bin Umar, "O Abu Abdurrahman, I saw you doing 4 things which I never saw being done by anyone of your companions. Abdullah bin Umar said, What are those, O Ibn Jurayj? I said, never saw you touching any corner of the Kaaba except these 2 facing south, Yemen, and I saw you wearing shoes made of tanned leather and dyeing your hair with henna, a kind of dye. I also noticed that whenever you were in Mecca, the people assume ihram on seeing the new moon crescent, first of Dhul Hijjah, while you did not assume the ihram. Ihram is also called ihlal, which means loud calling, because a muhrim has to recite talbiyah aloud when assuming the state of ihram till the 8th of Dhul Hijjah, day of Tarwiyah. Abdullah replied regarding the corners of Kaaba, I never saw Allah's Apostle touching except those facing south, Yemen. And regarding the tanned leather shoes, no doubt I saw Allah's Apostle wearing non-hairy shoes, and he used to perform ablution while wearing the shoes, i.e. wash his feet and then put on the shoes. So I love to wear similar shoes. And about the dyeing of the hair with henna, no doubt I saw Allah's Apostle dyeing his hair with it, and that is why I like to dye my hair with it. Regarding ihlal, I did not see Allah's Apostle assuming ihlal till he set out for Hajj on the 8th of Dhul Hijjah. 168 narrated Atiyah that the Prophet at the time of washing his deceased daughter had said to them, Start from the right side, beginning with those parts which are washed in ablution. 169 narrated Aisha, the Prophet used to like to start from the right side on wearing shoes, combing his hair, and cleaning or washing himself, and on doing anything else. 170 narrated Anas bin Malik. I saw Allah's Apostle when the Asr prayer was due and the people searched for water to perform ablution, but they could not find it. Later on, a pot full of water for ablution was brought to Allah's Apostle. He put his hand in that pot and ordered the people to perform ablution from it. I saw the water spring out from underneath his fingers till all of them performed the ablution. It was one of the miracles of the Prophet. 171 narrated Ibn Sirin. I said to Abida, I have some of the hair of the Prophet, which I got from Anas or from his family. Abida replied, No doubt, if I had a single hair of that, it would have been dearer to me than the whole world and whatever is in it. 172 narrated Anas, While Allah's Apostle got his head shaved, Abu Talha was the first to take some of his hair. 173 narrated Abu Huraira, Allah's Apostle said, If a dog drinks from the utensil of any one of you, it is essential to wash it 7 times. 174 narrated Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, A man saw a dog eating mud from the severity of thirst. So that man took a shoe and filled it with water and kept on pouring the water for the dog till it quenched its thirst. So Allah approved of his deed and made him to enter paradise. And narrated Hamza bin Abdullah, my father said, During the lifetime of Allah's Apostle, the dogs used to urinate and pass through the mosques, come and go. Nevertheless, they never used to sprinkle water on it, a urine of the dog. 175 narrated Adi bin Hatim, I asked the Prophet about the hunting dogs, and he replied, If you let loose, with Allah's name, your tame dog after a game, and it hunts it, you may eat it. But if the dog eats of that game, then do not eat it, because the dog has hunted it for himself. I further said, Sometimes I send my dog for hunting, and find another dog with it. He said, Do not eat the game, for you have mentioned Allah's name only on sending your dog, and not the other dog. 176 narrated Abu Huraira, Allah's Apostle said, A person is considered in prayer as long as he is waiting for the prayer in the mosque. As long as he does not do hadaf, a non-Arab man asked, O Abi Huraira, what is hadaf? I replied, "It is a passing of wind from the anus. That is one of the types of hadaf." 177. Narrated Abbas bin Tamim. My uncle said the Prophet said, "One should not leave his prayer unless he hears sound or smells something." In regard to passing wind. 178. Narrated Ali. I used to get emotional urethral discharges frequently and felt shy to ask Allah's Apostle about it, so I requested Al-Miqdad bin Al-Aswad to ask the Prophet about it. Al-Miqdad asked him, and he replied, "One has to perform ablution after it." 179. Narrated Zayd bin Khalid. I asked Uthman bin Affan about a person who engaged in intercourse but did not discharge. Uthman replied he should perform ablution like the one for an ordinary prayer, but he must wash his private part. Uthman added, "I heard it from Allah's Apostle." And I asked Ali as Zubair, Talha and Ubay bin Ka'b about it, and they too gave the same reply. This order was cancelled later on, and taking a bath became necessary for such cases. 180. Narrated Abu Sa'id al-Qud. Allah's Apostle sent for an Ansari man who came with the water dropping from his head. The Prophet said, "Perhaps we have forced you to hurry up, haven't we?" The Ansari replied, "Yes." Allah's Apostle further said, "If you are forced to hurry up during intercourse, or you do not discharge, then ablution is due on you." This order was cancelled later on, i.e. one has to take a bath. 181. Narrated Usama bin Zayd. When Allah's Apostle departed from Arafah, he turned towards a mountain pass, where he answered the call of nature. After he had finished, I poured water and he performed ablution, and then I said to him, "O Allah's Apostle, will you offer the prayer?" He replied, "The Musalla place of prayer is ahead of you in Muzdalifah." 182. Narrated Al-Mughira bin Shuba. I was in the company of Allah's Apostle on one of the journeys, and he went out to answer the call of nature, and after he finished, I poured water and he performed ablution. He washed his face, forearms, and passed his wet hand over his head and over the two cuff leather socks. 183. Narrated Abdullah bin Abbas that he stayed overnight in the house of Maimuna, the wife of the Prophet, his aunt. He added, "I lay on the bed, cushion transversely, while Allah's Apostle and his wife lay in the lengthwise direction of the cushion. Allah's Apostle slept till the middle of the night, either a bit before or a bit after it, and then he woke up rubbing the traces of sleep off his face with his hands. Then he recited the last 10 verses of Surah Al-Imran, got up and went to a hanging water skin. He then performed the ablution from it, and it was a perfect ablution, and then stood up to offer the prayer. I too got up and did as the Prophet had done. Then I went and stood by his side. He placed his right hand on my head and caught my right ear and twisted it. He prayed 2 rak'ah, then 2 rak'ah and 2 rak'ah, and then 2 rak'ah, and then 2 rak'ah, and then 2 rak'ah separately 6 times, and finally 1 rak'ah, the witr. Then he lay down again in the bed till the muaddin came to him, whereupon the Prophet got up, offered a 2 light rak'ah prayer, and went out and led the Fajr prayer. 184. Narrated Asma bint Abu Bakr. I came to Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, during the solar eclipse. The people were standing and offering the prayer, and she was also praying. I asked her, "What is wrong with the people?" She beckoned with her hand towards the sky. And said, "Subhanallah." I asked her, "Is there a sign?" She pointed out yes. So I too stood for the prayer till I fell unconscious, and later on I poured water on my head. After the prayer, Allah's Apostle praised and glorified Allah and said, "Just now I have seen something which I never saw before at this place of mine, including paradise and hell. I have been inspired and have understood that you will be put to trials in your graves, and these trials will be like the trials of Ad-Dajjal or nearly like it. The sub-narrator is not sure of what Asma said. Angels will come to every one of you and ask, "What do you know about this man?" A believer will reply, "He is Muhammad, Allah's apostle, and he came out to us with self-evident truth and guidance, so we accepted his teachings, believed, and followed him." Then the angels will say to him, "Sleep in peace," as they have come to know that he was a believer. On the other hand, a hypocrite or doubtful person will reply, "I do not know, but heard the people saying something, and so I did the same." 185. Yahya al-Mazani narrated, a person asked Abdullah bin Zayd, who was grandfather of Amr bin Yahya, "Can you show me how Allah's apostle used to perform ablution?" Abdullah bin Zayd replied in the affirmative and asked for water. He poured it on his hands and washed them twice. Then he rinsed his mouth thrice and washed his nose with water thrice by putting water in it and blowing it out. He washed his face thrice, and after that he washed his forearms up to the elbows twice. And then he passed his wet hands over his head from its front to its back, and vice versa, beginning from the front and taking them to the back of his head up to the nape of the neck, and then brought them back to the front again from where he started, and washed his feet up to the ankles. 186. Narrated Amr, my father saw Amr bin Abi Hassan asking Abdullah bin Zayd about the ablution of the Prophet. Abdullah bin Zayd asked for the earthenware pot containing water, and in front of him performed ablution like that of the Prophet. He poured water from the pot over his hand and washed his hands thrice, and then he put his hands in the pot and rinsed his mouth and washed his nose by putting water in it and then blowing it out with 3 handfuls of water. Again he put his hand in the water and washed his face thrice, and washed his forearms up to the elbows twice, and then he put his hands in the water and then passed them over his head by bringing them to the front and then to the rear of the head once, and then he washed his feet up to the ankles. 187. Narrated Abu Juhayfa, Allah's apostle came to us at noon, and water for ablution was brought to him. After he had performed ablution, the remaining water was taken by the people, and they started smearing their bodies with it as a blessed thing. The Prophet offered 2 rakah of the Zuhur prayer and then 2 rakah of the Asr prayer, while an Anza spearhead stick was there as a sutra in front of him. Abu Musa said, the Prophet asked for a tumbler containing water and washed both his hands and face in it, and then threw a mouthful of water in the tumbler and said to both of us, Abu Musa and Bilal, drink from the tumbler and pour some of its water on your faces and chests. 188. Narrated Ibn Shihab, Mahmud bin Arabi, who was the person on whose face the Prophet had ejected a mouthful of the water from his family's well while he was a boy, and Urwa, on the authority of Miswar and others who testified each other, said, whenever the Prophet performed ablution, his companions were nearly fighting for the remains of the water. 189. Narrated As-Sa'ib bin Yazid, my aunt took me to the Prophet and said, O Allah's apostle, this son of my sister has got a disease in his legs. So he passed his hands on my head and prayed for Allah's blessing for me. Then he performed ablution, and I drank from the remaining water. I stood behind him, and I saw the seal of the prophethood between his shoulders, and it was like the Zir al-Hijla, means the button of a small tent, but some said egg of a partridge, etc. 190. Narrated Amr bin Yahya, on the authority of his father Abdullah bin Zayd, poured water on his hand from a utensil containing water and washed them, and then with one handful of water he rinsed his mouth, and then cleaned his nose by putting water in it and then blowing it out.